The following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we need to rethink it and criminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
All right, good day, tokers and tokenettes, and welcome to the show. It is Monday, March 31st, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. It's also got to be a very, very special pair of birthdays to the two people who probably had the most influence on me becoming a professional pothead pundit, and that would be Madeline Martinez from the world-famous Cannabis Cafe. Happy birthday, Madeline. And to my own dad, the rockin' Johnny B, who turned 72 years old today. Thanks, Dad, for everything you've done, everything you've taught me, and all the inspiration you gave me for this career, and, of course, always requiring me to look shit up. Appreciate that, Dad. All right, on today's show, as you know, yesterday, we were down at the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference in Eugene, Oregon. Myself and Brian the Red were at the Hilton, and we got plenty of coverage for you. Lots of video highlights. We still have to cut those up because we can't show you the entire programs there. They kind of want you to go there and see them for yourself, but we will bring you some highlights throughout the rest of the week. But tonight on the Toker Talk Radio Hour, we will give you my presentation in its entirety, Green Rush 2, which I got a lot of great feedback on this one, and I hope you enjoy it. We will show you that in Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. In Hour 1, we've got all sorts of great stuff for you, including, as we do every Monday, our visit with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, the chairman of the NORML Board of Directors and one of America's leading researchers on marijuana culture, science, history, and health. That'll be at 1:30, and we'll take your live calls at 971-533-7111 if you've got a question for Dr. Mitch. Also, we will be bringing you, like I said, highlights from the OMMBC. At the 45 after mark, we are going to play our interview with Stephanie Bishop. She's a medical marijuana activist who wanted to talk about the medical utility of BHO, of concentrates. So we had a great conversation about that. You'll hear that at the end of our first hour. And in our behind the headlines segment, we spoke with Sarah Jane from the Oregon Cannabis Industries Association about the burgeoning business world in medical marijuana in the state of Oregon and across the country. So that conversation comes up right after our 420 radio news. And in the headlines today, D.C. has decrimmed marijuana. Virginia shows a poll with overwhelming support for medical. New Jersey prosecutors want to legalize. Idaho authorities are profiling Colorado license plates. And a California woman will get her marijuana returned from Arizona. All that's coming up on the Russ Belville Show.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
I'm Radical Russ Belville, and I want to thank you for listening to 420 Radio. We couldn't survive without you and our sponsors, and I'd like you to check out one of our prime sponsors, the National Cannabis Coalition.
I've been working with NCC since June of 2012, and I'm proud to be part of the team they have assembled. National Cannabis Coalition is building the partnerships with reformers, lawmakers, and industry we need to be successful. Visit the National Cannabis Coalition website at nationalcannabiscoalition.com or the easier-to-remember ncc420.com. That's where you'll get the exclusive first look at my radical rants, as well as informative articles from the nation's top cannabis pundits. Visit ncc420.com today, and if you have your phone handy, text Russ to 420-420 to support NCC and 420 Radio. It's a free text message that helps us help you end adult marijuana prohibition. Learn more at ncc420.com, and thanks for supporting independent marijuana legalization public radio. 420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get highly educated. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the best way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
This is your 420 Radio News for Monday, March 31st, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. D.C. marijuana decriminalization bill signed into law from normal.org. This afternoon, the Simple Possession of Small Quantities of Marijuana Decriminalization Amendment Act of 2013 was signed by the mayor of the District of Columbia after being approved by the City Council in a 10-1 vote. This measure amends the punishment for the possession or transfer of up to 1 ounce of marijuana from a criminal misdemeanor punishable by up to 6 months incarceration and a maximum fine of $1,000 to a civil violation punishable by a $25 fine, no arrest, no jail time, no criminal record. Due to federal oversight of the district, this measure will not officially become law until it is received by the U.S. Congress and undergoes a period of review. The review period is likely to extend into late summer. We will update you when it has been finalized. If Congress chooses not to act to overturn the measure, it becomes D.C. law. Virginia voters back medical marijuana 6-1, Quinnipiac University poll finds from Quinnipiac. Virginia voters support medical marijuana by an overwhelming 84 to 13% margin, but support for recreational marijuana is divided, with a large generation gap and a smaller gender gap, according to a Quinnipiac University poll released today. Support for medical marijuana ranges from 75 to 21 among Republicans to 92 to 6 among Democrats, and from 81 to 17 among voters over 65 years old to 90 to 9 among voters 18 to 29 years old, the independent Quinnipiac University poll finds. Support for legalization of marijuana for personal use is 46%, with 48% opposed. Democrats support the measure 58 to 35, with Republicans opposed 68 to 27, and independents divided 47 to 47. Men support it at 52 to 43, while women oppose it 51 to 42. Voters 18 to 29 years old supported legalizing marijuana for personal use at 71% versus 26% opposed, with support dropping through the age groups. Voters over 65 years old are opposed 66 to 24. Marijuana is equally as dangerous as alcohol, 47% of Virginia voters say, while 36% say it is less dangerous and 14% say it is more dangerous. Marijuana use does not lead to the use of other drugs, voters say 51 to 41. If marijuana use were legal in Virginia, 62% of voters say it would not bother them if neighbors grew marijuana in their home. Republicans and voters over 65 years old are the only listed groups who say they would be bothered. New Jersey prosecutors, it's high time to legalize pot, from app.com. Proponents of legalizing marijuana in New Jersey received a boost from an unlikely source, the very people who prosecute pot users. The New Jersey State Municipal Prosecutors Association has come out in favor of legalizing possession of marijuana. The support of the Prosecutors Association comes as 2 bills were introduced this month in the legislature and as polls show a majority of Americans favor legalization. One of the bills, introduced on March 10th, calls for a referendum asking voters to legalize the possession of an ounce or less of marijuana. It is sponsored by Assemblyman Reed Gascoria, a Democrat, and Michael Patrick Carroll, a Republican. Carroll said, quote, "If it were up to me, I would make all quantities legal. Why should the government be in the business of criminalizing marijuana? All it does is create administrative Al Capones and puts the power in the hands of gangsters." End quote. Idaho authorities used license plate profiling in traffic stops, says Colorado man from OregonLive.com. A 69-year-old retired Colorado business executive is suing Idaho law enforcement authorities for detaining him and searching his vehicle after a traffic stop last year. Darian Rawson filed a lawsuit last week in U.S. District Court in Idaho. He accuses local and state police of, quote, license plate profiling, end quote. Colorado is one of 2 states with legal recreational marijuana programs. Marijuana is outlawed in Idaho. Supreme Court won't hear appeal from cops reluctant to return pot, from U.S. News and World Report. California resident Valerie Okun is one step closer to reclaiming medical marijuana seized by Arizona police near the Mexican border in 2011. The U.S. Supreme Court declined Monday to review state court rulings that found Okun is entitled to the return of her marijuana, currently held by the Yuma County Sheriff's Office. Arizona's medical marijuana law, ratified in 2010, allows reciprocity for out-of-state medical marijuana patients, but the Sheriff's Office argued returning the drug would violate federal law. This has been your 420 Radio News for Monday, March 31st, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. When we come back, we'll give you exclusive coverage of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference yesterday in Eugene, Oregon, and an interview with the Oregon Cannabis Industry Association's Sarah Jane. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. We'll be right back.
Cannabis Outreach Collective is an alternative health and wellness option located in Gladstone, Oregon, that serves patients in the Portland area and beyond. We are a full-service alternative health and wellness collective accommodating patients with natural, organic, holistic, and homeopathic remedies, nutritional guidance, advice, education, and medical cannabis, fully in accordance with Oregon OMMP law. You can find out more about Cannabis Outreach Collective on Facebook at COC503 or by emailing cannabisoutreachcollective503@gmail.com or by telephone at 503-853-1319. Check out our menu on Weed Maps and visit Cannabis Outreach Collective today. All right, good day, tokers and tokettes. Welcome. We are here at the Eugene Hilton for the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference. We're tabling in here in a really big exhibitor room with lots of exhibitors. We were in Ashland a couple of months ago, and this is definitely a much bigger venue. We're having ourselves a good time, and we're talking with people as they come through here and want to discuss the various topics and issues that are happening in the cannabis community. And joining us right here at the desk, we have Sarah Jane from the Portland Medical Cannabis Club. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing great.
And you're tabling here for the Oregon Cannabis Industries Association. Are you pretty excited about this event?
Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited to see this many educated professionals together to represent our culture pretty well. So this is pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, it's looking really good. And so far they're in the other room doing presentations and speeches. And we're here in the exhibitor area just talking about the issues, like I said, and one of the issues you wanted to bring up was the issue of concentrates, dabs, and their medical utility, because they kind of get a bad name sometimes. People, look at blowtorches and the culture that's growing around 710, but you wanted to express how medically beneficial it was.
Yes, for myself, I have a lot of medical issues that cause inflammation, and anecdotally, I've noticed that using like flour, and I was vaporizing it, I wasn't getting the same kind of relief that I could get from maybe 1 or 2 dabs. And unfortunately, I'm noticing that in the culture, and I don't know if you have, Russ, that there is that, like you said, that bad connotation. There's a lot of like competitive dabbing, or people who are making the concentrates in an unsafe way. And so I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, and this is definitely something I've heard from other patients who have told me, I could vaporize all day if I wanted to get close to touching the pain or the inflammation, but I find a dab or two is going to take care of it. And it's not like you have all day to sit around the vaporizer.
Yeah, I'm a mother, and when I'm out with my children and things like that, I can't, go and smoke a bowl somewhere, but to be able to take, one dab will take my pain level to a place where I can be present with my children. I can do the activities that I want to do, and I'm not stuck at home, stuck next to my vaporizer, stuck next to my water piece and that kind of thing.
As we look at the history of prohibition, we find that the prohibition of marijuana led breeders to want to grow plants that were higher in THC. Do you feel like this recreational culture around dabs leads the dab makers, the extraction artists, to want to make, again, something that's more of a recreational substance than a medical substance, or do you find much difference that way?
I'm not really versed enough with talking to the people who make the concentrates to want to make that kind of judgment statement on them that they're just not medically minded. But from a lot of the things that I'm seeing, I'm not seeing a lot of patient-mindedness there. And when we're talking about butane or versus CO2, and we're talking about purging, and we're talking about what PSI you run it so you don't get the histamines and things, I think that the health factors need to be taken into account. I want to see the research done. I want to see the testing done on the concentrates to make sure that people who are actual patients are getting the medicinal value as well as not hurting themselves. I don't know.
Yeah, and we find with Washington and Colorado, with their recreational schemes, they have explicitly allowed for the concentrates, but in the medical states, it's kind of a hit and miss situation. Some states are, won't allow concentrates at all. California comes to mind, that it's illegal to have concentrates. So I think we need to have more emphasis on these medical aspects so that people can understand that this high dosage, high potency variety is necessary for many people's medical use. I think the developing technology is helping as we get away from dab rigs and nails and more into vape pens and sticks. I think that's going to help us, don't you?
Yeah, I think it will too. And delivery device has a lot to do with like the social stigma. Also, I think that when you look at medicinally, you look at things like, let's just say nutrients. Let's say you're deficient in vitamin D. You can't just take the regular dose of vitamin D and bring your levels up to a therapeutic level. So even in that, you have to see that the doses become concentrated to be therapeutic. So I think that that's what's happening with dabbing, that when you concentrate the CBDs and the THC together, that somehow that's becoming therapeutic for people. And probably whereas the lower doses are more just a maintenance level if you're like cannabinoid deficient. So I think that definitely the research needs to be done, that if we're looking at other things in the medical community, like nutrients and things at a therapeutic level or higher concentrate, I think it would just make sense that this would be at a higher concentrate.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying about us getting more research and science involved in this, because how many of these people out there are blasting from watching some YouTube video rather than having any sort of chemistry or biology or medical knowledge?
And I think a lot of regulation might be helpful in terms of like regulating the producers to make sure that they're using a spark-free room, so that they're not causing these explosions that are not only hurting themselves, hurting the people in their vicinity, but are hurting the culture, because then people are going to be scared that these, butane labs are going to explode in their neighborhoods, and that's a big safety issue. So I think a lot of it is going to come down to keeping everybody safe and getting the medicine that the patients need.
All right. So Sarah Jane here from the Portland Medical Cannabis Club here with the Oregon Cannabis Industries Association. As we wrap things up here, anything else you'd like to address as far as the issues?
I just stay active in the legislation. Keep up with what initiatives are happening, just to keep yourself as a patient safe and make sure that you're keeping yourself educated.
All right, Sarah Jane, thank you so much for joining us here, and thanks for your opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. Thank you for having me.
All right, stay tuned, folks. We'll be back right after this with more coverage of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference.
All right, thanks to Sarah Jane and everybody there at OMMBC. By the way, there's going to be an international conference happening in September. It's going to be huge. It'll be here in Portland, and we will be there presenting and covering it for you on 420 Radio. It's 20 after. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have Bacon Dan calling in with our Roots Monday Daily Toker Tunes.
If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Let him bring in the beat. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio, The Russ Belville Show, Ganja John, and Cascadia Concentrates, among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Adam's meticulous designs are individually crafted and screened in vibrant, high-definition color. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org. Let him bring in the beat.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420.
In the afternoon, if I'm home, I smoke marijuana.
You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Marijuana, yeah, yeah. Oh, I got my ganja.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Roots Monday, featuring the blues, country, folk, and jazz music that birthed the modern sounds we enjoy today. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tunes.
Welcome back, everyone. 23 after the hour, and we're back here in Portland, and we're speaking with Portland's favorite cheerleading resident, the biggest fan of Portland ever, Bacon Dan's on the line. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great, Russ, man. How you doing?
I am learning that in my older age, I can't drink as much as I used to. That's what I'm learning. It's not a good thing when you leave your debit card at the bar. That's always a bad sign.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, that's a sign for an intervention, man. Somebody needs to step in here. How was your weekend, Dan?
Oh, it was good. I relaxed. I smoked. It was, I drank. It was just a true Portland weekend, man.
Right on. Hey, I got a note from Ed Foreman. Apparently, he wants to have me on the show, the show before 420. So it looks like we'll be working together on that.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, this whole month is going to be a tribute to late night on the Ed Foreman show. So it's going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be tributes to all different types of late night through the 60s up till today. So it's going to be fun.
Oh, right on. So I'll be glad to be a part of that. We'll do that on Tuesday night, and then we'll start our road trip across the country to get to Denver for 420. So it'll be a perfect send-off. All right, for today's Daily Toker Tunes, I've been liking the direction you've taken this, Dan, over the past few weeks. We've been getting deep into my 70s FM album rock collection. So tell us about today's song.
I'm glad to hear, man. You know, today we're going with Dr. John, which for anybody who's ever seen my tattoos, you'll see the red Voodoo Skulls All Up and Down My Arms is definitely a tribute right to Dr. John. This is from his 1970 album, Remedies, which is in itself a kick-ass album. And this song, I've always loved this. Even when I was a little kid, I thought it was kind of weird that, this little weird shaggy-haired dude would be into someone like Dr. John, but the music always just spoke to me, and yeah, it's just this is a true Toker tune, man.
All right, here it is, Dr. John with What Comes Around Goes Around on your Roots Monday Daily Toker Tunes. Check the post out at 420radio.org and follow Bacon Dan on there for all of these tunes.
Thank you, sir.
Don't you hang me out on the rim. I don't have to say, 'cause I can't swim. Don't face me out on no rim. If I got a trip, let it be at the crib. I don't want no excuses. I wanna see something deserve. Don't you try and cut me out. Girl, let me check your butt. Hey, what goes around, comes around. What goes around, goes around. What goes around, comes around. And what comes around, goes around. And the way it goes up, the way it drops down, 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 down. I don't want no alibi. Down the ride. I don't need no way to tell you. I can see your love be more shade. Yes, don't even wanna hear no excuses. I just wanna see something deserve. Yeah, and don't you get my goal. Girl, till I check your pulse. Yeah, what goes around, comes around. What goes around, goes around. What goes around, comes around. And what comes around, goes around. Where it goes up, where it drops down, down, down.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420. You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Drug Truth Network, Century of Lies, starring Dean Becker from Houston, Texas. Mondays at 7 a.m. Pacific on 420radio.org.
It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earleywine. Dr. Earleywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times magazine. Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
Welcome back, everyone. Half past on a Monday, and that means it's time for our regular dose of cannabis science with Dr. Mitch Earleywine. How you doing, Dr. Mitch?
Stay away from academic parties, Russ.
Not as fun as the parties I'm attending, is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. Well, I appreciate you calling in from the party, though. That's very helpful. And you were like you were telling us that you're the director of something, and now you have to do all these events.
Oh, I'm director of clinical training now, which sounds like it would have something to do with training clinicians, but it really means pushing paper around and going to parties that I don't want to go to.
Oh, well, all right. Let's see if we can make your day a little better with some cannabis science discussion. There's a couple of studies out lately that we're going to talk about, but let me remind our listeners, if you'd like to call in, if you've got a question for Dr. Mitch live here, you can call 971-533-7111. That's 971-533-7111. Or you can just get into our chat room. Just type /login. You can create a username and you can ask your questions in the chat room. All right. So the first one I wanted to go over was a study that took a look at crime and medical marijuana states. And lo and behold, medical marijuana didn't seem to make crime go up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
This was a delightful study in part because it used FBI statistics that were not gathered to really address anything about medical marijuana, so we can't accuse these guys of any kind of bias as far as data entry is concerned. They looked at 7 different kinds of crime, and when you control for the number of tests they actually did, there's certainly no differences in crime rates across medical marijuana states and non-medical marijuana states. And in fact, one crime, homicide, is actually significantly down, even controlling for the number of stats they performed. And what that says to me is that, hey, medical marijuana keeps people from killing each other.
And is that, what would be the reason for that? Perhaps a substitution effect with alcohol, maybe?
I thought either that mechanism or the possibility that, in fact, folks who are eager to find medical cannabis don't have to go to the underground market and risk getting shot.
Yeah, good point. With medical marijuana laws, you take away that violence aspect of the prohibited market somewhat, so that would be good. Is there any way that they're going to be able to tease out why this may be the case, or we'll just have to accept that it is the case and not really know the reasoning?
I think this should inspire some subsequent work to try to address this, but these stats aren't gathered at the event level, so it's not as if the way these homicides were done can be linked to any particular potential mechanism. But it's reassuring to at least think that, hey, medical cannabis is not increasing crime, and that argument that we often hear is clearly easy to dispute now.
Yeah, and there's another argument with respect to medical marijuana states where opponents will try to say, well, kids smoke so much more marijuana in these medical marijuana states. Is there any evidence that medical marijuana leads to increase in use by any of these demographics?
It's funny because Karen O'Keefe and I reviewed this literature at least 8 years ago and showed no differences. And in a few states where it has gone up slightly, a neighboring state that didn't have medical marijuana also went up slightly. I really don't think this is the case. And in fact, when you talk to teens, they basically say, who wants to use grandma's nausea med?
Good point. All right, we have another study. This one came up, I found it on Raw Story, and it was some Canadian researchers who surveyed 39,000 students in the province of Ontario, grades 7, 9, and 11, and did this for 20 years, 30 years, 81 through 2011, and compared their marijuana use and their tobacco use and their academic performance, and found that the students who only smoked marijuana did better in school than the students who smoked only cigarettes or those who smoked both. Have you seen this study, and what does this really tell us?
So I have the report, but I don't actually have the data, and I don't want to make too much of this in part because I'm not sure how many stats they actually ran. But it's clearly the case that It's not that smoking marijuana is making you do better than folks who don't smoke marijuana. It's that smoking marijuana and only marijuana clearly is correlated with doing better in school than folks who smoke cigarettes. I think this may be more of a statement about who's smoking cigarettes now, because in fact to smoke cigarettes and only smoke cigarettes is in some ways a sign of often low socioeconomic status or little hope about the future, and so less investment in school. I definitely do not want the idea that cannabis makes your homework go easier getting out there somehow.
Right. And of course they showed that the ones that were using cannabis only didn't do as well as the populations that didn't do anything. They didn't outperform the non-users, so it's not like it made them any better. They're just doing better than cigarette smokers. And I agree. I don't think this is linked to the actual substance, but rather the population using that substance. Now that tobacco smoking is down to something like 39% lifetime use, it's lower than marijuana use these days. It would be more that I think marijuana is becoming more mainstream, and kids that might have been honor students before aren't as afraid to be using it, perhaps.
Well, it's funny, too, because in that same vein, we had those Peter Fried data where everybody's saying, oh, the ones who smoke every day, their IQs are down. But in that data set, what nobody ever talks about is the folks that were only using on the weekends had a modest increase in IQ. And I think in part what we're really saying is there's a subset of folks who not only can handle a little marijuana use, but are also very committed to their education, and they happen to not be smoking cigarettes.
You know, we talk a lot about marijuana is safer than alcohol, and I just reported today a Quinnipiac poll from Virginia, and it found something like 47% of the people thought marijuana and alcohol were equally dangerous, and then another 36% that found marijuana was less dangerous than alcohol. As marijuana becomes more mainstream and legal in numerous states, do you think that that will have a shift in, say, more intelligent, wiser people choosing cannabis, knowing the truth about it?
I think that's really the case, and I think some of the prevention efforts are going to be a lot more targeted now. I'm reviewing a paper that I can't claim the authors or anything, but they're really specific alcohol problems and specific cannabis problems that are associated with teen use, and they really aren't the same thing. And I think a sophisticated prevention effort would say, listen, if you're trying to do this, here's what cannabis could do and how it could go awry. Alcohol creates a different set of problems, and here's what they are. And I think that's going to increase our credibility with teens in a way that we've really never had with some of the standard silly DARE-type programs.
You know, as we look at the data for teen use of tobacco, and we've seen it, plummet since the Tobacco Settlement Agreement in 1998. I think a big part of that was, the truth campaigns, I think it was called, where they would show various statistics in very interesting ways for a young viewer, and it got that information out that tobacco is deadly, tobacco's going to kill you, tobacco's not cool. As marijuana becomes legal, we can't say that about marijuana. It's not going to kill them. It's kind of cool, actually. So how are we going to, in a legalized world, get kids to not want to use cannabis until they're of age?
I think some of the strategies that have worked with alcohol will actually work with cannabis. So rather than going with some alarmist lie about it's going to be a gateway to heroin, saying, listen, we're concerned about your respiratory development, and we don't really have data on how cannabis, even vaporized, affects the developing lung. We don't have a ton of alarmist data about brain structure changes, but there are at least a couple of studies that suggest that this might interfere. So we're not saying never smoke cannabis, something crazy will happen. We're saying, why don't you wait? And in fact, we know that it's bound to be better.
There we go. All right, we're speaking with Dr. Mitch Earleywine. We'll take your questions here in our chat room. Also on our live phone line at 971-533-7111. But if you'd rather keep your question confidential, you can always send it in by email straight to Dr. Mitch at 420research@gmail.com, 420research@gmail.com. All right, Dr. Mitch, as we're approaching April, of course, tomorrow's April 1st, and that means that we're 21 days away from 420 is coming up. It's going to be on Easter Sunday. It's going to be huge, especially in Denver, also in Seattle, these legal states. As we move forward towards 420, and more people who are new tokers might want to be getting involved now that it's legal, what sort of advice would you give the new cannabis consumer?
My theme for 420 this year is less is more. I really want to have people enjoy cannabis as much as possible, and in fact, the way to enjoy it as much as possible is a little is enough. I'm apprehensive about folks who are new users turning to edibles right away because it can be deceptive, the impact can be dramatic, the onset is much, much later. I don't want to have a story where somebody says I had to wait 3 hours. So, in fact, at an hour and a half, I ate 12 more brownies. Then I got the munchies, and what was around but brownies? So if we can get the less is more message out there, I really think it's going to be great. My apprehension is everybody's going to go in and say, I want to try them all, and I want to try them all now. There's another 420 coming up, and in fact, 421, the cannabis is just as good.
All right. We have a question from Brian Kerr who wants to know, is smoking cannabis ever better for medicinal use than vaporizing it?
There really aren't any cannabinoids released from smoking that aren't released also from vaporization. The onset of effects from actually lighting it on fire seems to be a little more rapid than from the vaporizer. The vaporizer takes a little longer to kick in. So if you're, literally vomiting right there that second, and you need absolute rapid relief, I can imagine someone could argue, hey, I really do need to smoke. But otherwise, there's really no reason that I can think of where smoking would be better than vaporizing.
That's an interesting point. The only, as I saw the question, the first thing that popped in my mind would be, well, if you don't have the electricity or the device to vaporize with, the joint is pretty portable. But other than convenience, I couldn't have thought of any reason why, like you say, when we burn cannabis, we're actually destroying a lot of the cannabinoids in the combustion process, aren't we?
And you lose a lot more to side stream smoke that you wouldn't lose in a vaporizer.
Yeah, and as expensive as it can be in some places, you might want to invest in a vaporizer just as a cost-saving measure. Has anyone ever, determined what how much it would stretch your bud, so to speak, if we were doing that?
It was just an aside, but Nicholas Von Damme and I have a paper about the vaporizer that showed that basically the folks saved about a third on their pot bill under those circumstances.
Fantastic. All right, we have a call-in question here from the 407 area code. You're on the air with Dr. Mitch. What's your question?
Hey, this is Brent D. from Florida, and we're getting ready to, of course, become a medical state here pretty soon in November. But my question is I hear there's a ton of information out there about how the therapeutical benefits of cannabis on a lot of physical ailments and whatnot. But my question is, what about the mental illness?
So I just got a paper accepted on cannabis and PTSD, just suggesting that folks who use it, who have the disorder, claim that at least 2 subsets of symptoms seem to benefit. It's not my treatment of first choice for PTSD, but that's definitely there. Some of the hyperarousal associated with that disorder is there. For bipolar disorder, Lester Grinspoon has published 12 individual case studies, and I think you have to be super careful. But basically, if you can have an indica at night to make sure your sleep stays steady, you do fine. But if you accidentally get a sativa late and get your sleep out of whack, it actually can induce a manic episode. The literature on depression is still very mixed and kind of confusing, and so I honestly can't make a specific suggestion for everybody, but some individual users email me and suggest that it's been helpful for them. I prefer behavioral activation or cognitive behavioral therapy for that as a first try, in part because I just think it's a better way to enjoy your cannabis in the long run.
All right.
Right, and as a mood stabilizer. Thank you.
Thanks for your call-in question. Appreciate that. And again, if you want to get your questions in, our phone number here is 971-533-7111. We do this every Monday at 1:30 with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Or you can call really anytime, 24 hours a day. We've got a message machine, and you could leave your question there. We'll take care of it on a future show. Now, Dr. Mitch, like we mentioned, the 420 events are coming up. The festival events are coming up. And I know that NORML will be very active in helping to promote legalization throughout the rest of this year and the future. What's the latest with NORML? What can you tell us?
Well, the clincher on 420, of course, is that you can join the organization for $4.20 on that day. And I hate to sound like the biggest fundraiser in the world, but this is one chance where you can really get in as far as that's concerned. We've got the legal seminar coming up in Aspen that should be really delightful, whether you're an attorney or not. Really informative, wonderful people, and a way to get connected to basically the entire legal legalizing community. And so I'm really optimistic about that. And then we've got some really nice donors who've been not only willing to help fund projects here at NORML, but who are also going to help represent us abroad. So the idea of a NORML in Ireland, as interesting as that may sound, might be materializing really soon.
Yeah, actually, we've got the heads of NORML Ireland calling us this Friday. They're apparently doing their first conference over there in Ireland, so that's going to be fascinating. I really am excited about the NORML organization spreading to Europe and hopefully even South America would be nice to see.
Oh, I'm just delighted with that idea.
Yeah. Okay, folks, if you want to get involved, you can join NORML by just going to norml.org, and you can look up and find where your local chapter is if you want to join your local chapter, or if there is no local chapter, it can be you. You can make the local chapter. Just get yourself and 4 others who want to form the nonprofit board, and you can run your own independent NORML chapter. And that's one of the strengths of NORML I've found, is that each chapter is independent and can tailor their message and strategy to the politics on the ground there. They're not being dictated to by national. For example, I was just in Atlanta, Georgia with Peachtree NORML, and the way they have to craft their message is quite different than what they're doing in Colorado. So check them out at norml.org. Dr. Mitch, thank you so much for joining us. I hope the rest of your party goes a little bit better.
Looking forward to next week.
All right, thank you so much. When we come back, we've got more coverage of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference in Eugene. My interview with Stephanie Bishop coming up next.
You smoke trees till you get what you need now. Designer drugs and minted smokes to get through the day. You always get them so high.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
420 Radio, the world's voice of marijuana legalization.
My name's Davey, and I want to tell you about my friend, Glitch. He's done some pretty dopey things, like rollerblading down a roller coaster. He even thought he could be a pro wrestler. Then he thought he could fly. And once, some kids tried to get him to do drugs.
Beat it! I've done some dopey things, but I'll never do dope.
Drug-free's the way to...
Welcome back, everyone. It's the noontime hour here at the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference at the Hilton in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm joined at the desk here by Stephanie Bishop, who's an activist and the head of the OMMP Cup here in Oregon. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome back.
Oh, it is always a pleasure to hang with you, Mr. Russ Belville.
Oh, gosh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you so much. All right, so at this event here, we're learning a lot about the business aspects of this. What do you think about it so far?
You know, I'm really glad everybody came together here because, you know, I find that when there's a lot of changes being made in a market or in the movement, that there's a lot of rumors that go around. And, man, I just watched 350 people go, what? What? On lots of different points.
What were
like
some of them?
Everybody thought that there was a limit on the amount of licenses that they would give out here in Oregon, and there's not.
Nope.
And then on the medical marijuana medibles, which I don't think this is going to fly at all. There's too many patients out there who absolutely do not smoke marijuana as medicine. They have to eat it. There are epileptic patients out there. They don't smoke. They eat. There are 90-year-old people with lung cancer. They got to eat it. They can't smoke it. It's just not going to fly. But
and what is it that's not going to fly in case the people
they're not going to be able to put a ban on medibles here.
Right. That, if you don't know what they've done, this preliminary rule is they're trying to make a rule so that it keeps it away from kids. So nothing that would be attractive or sweet or tasty for a kid. Well, what? Adults have to eat crappy medicine?
Well, and beyond that, let's look at you. Sure, I agree with you. I have 4 kids, so I understand that. A couple of them are teenagers, and it just doesn't go past little kids. It goes to teenagers too.
Sure.
But here's the thing. You don't have to make that packaging look like candy. Hey, you don't even have to see what's in the packaging.
Sure.
In California, in some places, what they're doing is they've got the the perforated packaging that is not see-through.
Right.
And it has simply, a green logo on it that doesn't look like candy or that it came from a candy store at all. In fact, it has medical stuff on it, and that would make someone inclined to say, okay, this is medicine. But instead of saying, let's set those standards here in Oregon,
Right.
they've decided to try and say we're not going to do it at all. And
Right.
that's not acceptable for patients. That is not safe access now. And that's what we've been fighting for all these years.
Sure, and if there's one thing we've learned, it's that prohibition doesn't work.
No.
It's not like patients are going to stop using medicated edibles that taste like brownies or cookies or whatever.
Right.
It's just instead of it being in an opaque container with measurements of what is in it and who made it and guarantees that there was rules followed, it's going to be wrapped in some wax paper that somebody made in their kitchen.
Well, in the somebody made in their kitchen thing, we've moved away from that. There are commercial kitchens out there that you can rent by the hour, and the bakers are starting to move over into that. So why can't they be trusted to move over into proper packaging?
Yeah, the weird part about it is we start to cross all these boundaries of which regulatory agency controls what. Where you've got cannabis, which is under the Oregon Health Authority medical marijuana program, and then you got food handling, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah, and it's an important thing because, I love medical marijuana brownies. They are very helpful. They're medicinal. But I don't want to eat one that some kid handed me in some cellophane that he made in his own kitchen. I just don't want that. I want it to look like it came from my pharmacist. Even if it's not allowed to be given to me by my pharmacist, that doesn't mean it doesn't have to look like it's coming from a pharmacy, right?
Right. And it's going to take a while, I think, before regulators and legislators understand that, no, prohibition is what we're getting away from. And if you really want this to work, you really want to protect kids, you really want to protect patients, you want regulation, and you want buy-in from the community that kind of knows what's going on the ground.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they make these rules without having no idea what the world is like.
Yeah, no, I find that in every market. We travel around and we bring the news and the information from all these different places as activists. Mm-hmm. And then we come back and we report on that. We get this very good perspective of what's going on. We have a very balanced view.
Sure.
But when you're isolated in one market and you don't know what's going on other than the Google news feeds in other markets, you tend to get a little isolated and crazy.
Yes.
And I feel like that's here. But these people showed up because they are committed to providing safe access to Oregon medical marijuana patients. They're all taking risks. Mm-hmm. They have been taking risks. All of these places that are just opening up as information places, they still had to pay to open. They still had to build out. They still had to paint the walls, and that all costs money. And then they're doing this without the guarantee that they're going to have a legitimate business that they're not going to be incarcerated over in the end. It's insane. So we are surrounded right now at this conference by some of the bravest people I know. Bravest people.
Right.
People with children, people with small children. They're so committed to truth and health and good health that they're willing to take these chances, and I think we should back them up. You know?
Absolutely. And we're moving ahead now with, it looks like New Approach Oregon's going to get its petitions out. Oregon Cannabis Tax Act's got its petitions out.
Yeah.
Legalization's on its way in November of 2014. How do you see recreational being folded or matched into this emerging medical system?
Well, hopefully we learn from Washington.
Yeah.
Bam. Ouch. She just said that. I know, right? I don't want to say that.
Right.
I want this to work. But recreational marijuana, it was Dr. Franken. We were at a High Times Cannabis Cup, and I asked him a question. It was when this big whole, what's the difference between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana happened?
Yeah.
And I stood up and I said, Doctor, what do you tell your patients? What's the difference to you as a medical professional between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana? And his response to me was the most fabulous response I've ever heard. He said, in my left lapel pocket, I have some pretty good marijuana. In my right lapel pocket, I have some bomb marijuana. The right lapel pocket is my medicine. And the left lapel pocket is my recreational marijuana. And that's what I tell my patients. And I'm like, that's it. That is it. Patients need more. They need more. Recreational users, I'm not bagging on them. I'm a recreational user too. I mean, I think anything we do to improve the quality of our life with cannabis, do it. Do it, but I'm not, I don't know, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. But you're right. I think paying attention to what has happened in Washington State is definitely illustrative in that
no patient grows.
Right. I mean, we've got to keep the right for patients to grow. And I'm seeing a trend now where once dispensaries open up,
they want to take away the right to grow for patients. This just happened in Nevada.
Yeah.
They're taking away, they're grandfathered in until like 2016, I think it is.
Yeah.
But if a dispensary opens up within 25 miles, you got to stop growing.
Yeah.
And that's insane.
How did we stop patient rates? How did we make something regulated and legal and this, that, and the other, but we've gone back to draconian patient raids because they refuse to give up their personal grows in their house that doesn't hurt anybody?
Yeah.
And there's reforms that are being made right now, big time, in mass incarceration. At the end of last year, we saw the Obama administration actually change mandatory minimum requirements, right? And then there was clemency for a few crack cocaine people that have been in there. They're actually working on letting more people out of prison that have been sitting there for decades with nonviolent connections and things like that. And so, they're making reforms over here because incarceration costs so much. It costs taxpayers $36,000 per prisoner per year to keep them incarcerated. And if they didn't kill anybody, if they didn't maim anything, if there was no violence whatsoever in that crime, is it morally responsible for us as citizens to allow them to be incarcerated on our dollar?
Yeah, I would say not.
So we didn't change that. On the one hand, we've got a medical marijuana program and we've got recreational, but that we'll still have patient raids going on, and people will still be thrown in jail for a plant.
Yeah.
So.
And it's time that we move beyond and we get to the point where, people, adults, are just allowed to grow some plants for themselves. If they're not trying to open a business, they just want to grow zucchini or strawberries or cannabis. It doesn't matter. That you should be able to personally grow your own.
Well, we all really miss Gatewood Galbraith.
Oh,
he was such a but he really said it best, and I will quote him because I love it so much. He said that the prohibition of marijuana represents the government overstepping its boundaries and regulating public behavior, because now you're telling us what plants to put in God green earth to grow, what seeds to plant in God green earth to grow. And that is true. And that is why the battle to end prohibition will never stop. It is about sick people. It is about this. But it's also about public acceptance of something that does not cause public harm. It's about us being able to maintain control over our constitutional rights, regardless of whether the fact that we smoke pot or not. And that's what we have to get back to. It's going to take a long time. And it's like, when people say, well, where are we going? For us, it's really hard because it's crazy everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West. It's becoming the Wild East.
Yeah.
The East Coast is catching up.
Yes, they are.
So we'll see.
Well, the fight has always been about freedom. Marijuana just happens to be the battlefield in this case. So I agree with you there. Stephanie Bishop, you're doing great work in educating more people about mass incarceration and medical usages. And this is the best form of activism. Person-to-person, face-to-face activism, speaking out, speaking the truth, and showing people they have nothing to fear from an intelligent, attractive marijuana consumer. So there you go.
And the best thing that our listeners can do to show that they appreciate what we do as activists is to take this conversation to your local coffee shop. Sit down and have a very loud conversation about mass incarceration, about your constitutional rights, about how you feel about marijuana, and get people to join in, because we have to talk about it.
Yes, and people want to talk about it. They're just waiting for you to broach the subject. Really, it's not the kind of subject people just out of the blue. Hey, we imprison a lot of black people.
I'll take 2 or 3 activist friends into a coffee shop, and
go.
people will turn around. You'll hear chairs scraping. Like 2 or 3 of them will turn around, and all of a sudden we've got a meetup going on.
There you go. That's the way it's done. Stephanie Bishop, thank you so much.
Thank you, Russ Belville.
Love you. All right, we're going to take a break and get something to eat. We will be back with more coverage of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference from the Hilton.
Well, there you go. That's our interview with Stephanie from the Oregon Medical Marijuana Business Conference. Brian and I were down there yesterday. They're still having it today, Monday. Another full day is going on, but we had to come back here and bring you a show. So hope you enjoyed those clips. And coming up next in hour 2, we'll have the video of my full presentation, Green Rush 2, where I discuss a lot of the statistics that we have now that legalization's been in place for a year in Washington and Colorado. So that's coming up. You can also download that presentation from 420radio.org. If you'd like a copy, it's on sale for the rest of this week. All right, that's it. Thanks for joining us. When we come back in hour 2, we'll talk a little bit about the coolest cubby hole ever and Brian the Red and his brethren, Rocker T. For Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.